Hello friends, I'm Chadwick Harvey and this is Faithful Performance, where we explore the testimony of the biblical prophets and how they perfectly correlate with the current events of today. Thank you for joining us. Friends, in this episode we're going to continue our book series on my book, God's Fishermen, Satan's Hunters, the unspoken biblical prophecy that is terrorizing the world. We're on episode number 8, which is going to be the Jewish Aliyah, or the return of the Jewish people to the Promised Land from America. Before we commence, I'd like to summarize the previous videos that we've done that will lead us into this video. We first discovered God's everlasting covenants, which is the Abrahamic, the Davidic, and the New Covenant. We discovered that there was going to be a seed of the Abrahamic covenant over the Promised Land, the two great promises. And that seed is the same seed in the Davidic covenant, son of Abraham, son of David. We find that in Matthew 1. Obviously, that is Yeshua, Jesus, and it reverts us back to the Abrahamic covenant, to the Davidic covenant, and the Davidic covenant extends upon the Abrahamic covenant, stating that Jesus will sit on David's everlasting throne over the Promised Land of the Abrahamic covenant. So those two covenants work together and build and extend upon each other. And then also we've discovered the New Covenant. The New Covenant builds and extends upon the Abrahamic and the Davidic covenant. It does not replace it. The New Covenant replaces the Mosaic covenant or the Sinai covenant. Okay, when he puts the law or the Torah on their hearts, on their minds, like he does all of us when we're saved under the blood of the New Covenant. So it's important to understand that we're saved under the blood of the New Covenant, but we're not living in the New Covenant because the Jewish people have not accepted Yeshua as their Savior. Ezekiel 36, Jeremiah 31. Once they do that at the end of the age and Messiah returns for his second coming and throughout the millennial kingdom, then we'll be living in the New Covenant when they will be his people and he will be their God, as it states in the prophecies of Jeremiah 31 and also Ezekiel 36. So it's so important to understand that everlasting covenants, they are everlasting. Everlasting means everlasting. So the Abrahamic covenant, the seed in the Promised Land, the Davidic covenant, the same seed from David as well, son of Abraham, son of David. He will rule on David's everlasting throne over the Promised Land of the Abrahamic covenant, and then we'll be living in the New Covenant at the end when Messiah returns for his millennial kingdom. So it's so important to have our theology correct. Gentiles, I was born a Gentile, we're grafted into those covenants. It states this in Romans 11. It's a great chapter for Gentile believers to understand, who were born Gentile believers, that we're grafted into the commonwealth of Israel. Ephesians 2, 11 through 13. You were once strangers of the covenants. Now, because of the blood of the Lamb, you're grafted into these covenants in the commonwealth of Israel. So you're no longer a Gentile when you accept Jesus as your Messiah. You are into the commonwealth of Israel, which goes into a lot of unbelievable, awesome things that we need to understand. Very remarkable that we're in the commonwealth of Israel. Thank God Almighty. And then Galatians 3, 26 through 29 states, if you are a seed of Christ, you are a seed of Abraham, and you are heirs according to the promise, which is the Abrahamic covenant. So Paul in the New Testament tells us specifically, okay, multiple times, that we're in the commonwealth of Israel as Gentiles. So it's so important to understand that, not only for this prophecy that we're dealing with, but also for our theology to be correct, and we don't have replacement theology or any of these demonic things that are being taught in the Gentile church. So it's important to understand the covenants. It's the foundation of the prophecy that we've mentioned in the book and through the video series of the prophecy of the fishermen and the hunters. In episode number 2, we discovered that in Jeremiah 16, 14 through 17. And basically, I'm going to summarize it. It says there's going to be a greater exodus from the nations than from Exodus. Exodus was about 600,000 people who left Egypt. There's going to be a greater exodus at the end of the age with the Jewish people returning back to the Promised Land because of the Abrahamic, Davidic, and the New Covenant, ultimately because of God's everlasting promises. They're going to return back, and then the prophecy states how the Lord's going to do this. He's going to send his fishermen first to fish them back. and then afterwards he's going to send the hunters to provoke them back to the promised land. So it's a sobering prophecy at the end of it, but this prophecy we're seeing starting to be fulfilled. And we went through the original fishermen in episode number 3, God's original fishermen, which are the covenant people, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, David, and obviously Yeshua with the new covenant. And then in episode number 4, we discovered Satan's original hunters, which will give us great insight to the end of the age hunters. We found those to be Nimrod, who came directly against Abraham, Ishmael directly against Isaac, Esau directly against Jacob, David, we had Goliath directly against David, and then obviously the Herodian dynasty against Jesus. So the original hunters specifically and directly went against God's original fishermen, and we can get great understanding of that at the end of the age. Obviously Israel is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David, and then the end of the age hunters will be the regions of Nimrod, of Ishmael, of Esau, of Goliath, Philistia, and also we need to understand that as we look into the biblical prophecies, it's going to characterize, it's going to specifically tell us where the war is. It's the battle for Jerusalem. It's a family affair. It's Esau versus Jacob, Isaac versus Ishmael. If you want to say Nimrod versus Abraham, so be it. So you got these regions that the Lord's specifically interested in that's going to give us great insight to the end of the age when we go through these in the next 2 videos after this video. So in episode number 5, we discovered the mystery of Aliyah, which occurred with the Jewish people. Aliyah means return back to the promised land of the Jewish people. And we found that they were correlated with 4 blood moon tetrads over the last 500 years. 1492, the Spanish Inquisition. We had blood moon tetrad 1493, 1494, both years on Passover, both years on Tabernacles. Four blood moons, Passover, Tabernacles, 2 straight years. And there was a migration from the Spanish Inquisition because of persecution. Remember that. And then that's going to tie in today with Columbus sailing to the New World. We're about to discover America. And then we had 1948. What happened? We all know that's the state of Israel when they became a nation again. 1949, 1950, again, Passover, Tabernacles, 2 straight years. Blood moon tetrad, migration, Aliyah to the promised land after persecution of the Nazis. Okay, then we fast forward, 1967, 1968. What occurred? That's when they recaptured Jerusalem, okay, as their capital. In 1967 with the 6-Day War, what occurred? 67 and 68, blood moon tetrad. Both years, Passover, Tabernacles, on the Lord's divine appointments. You know the statistics, it's just unreal how this occurred for 3 straight blood moon tetrads in the last 500 years on the Lord's feast days. You know, it's just astronomical. Man could not have done that. And they made Aliyah to Jerusalem. They ascended to the capital of Israel. Okay, and then we fast forward to 2014, 2015. Again, the mystery of Aliyah continues to occur. Blood moon tetrad, both years, Passover, Tabernacles. And then just as we discovered in last week's videos, that was Satan's end of the age hunters being released. We discovered that the end of the age fishermen were released in 1948. They had to become a nation again, and then they started to fish their people back. It's been a greater exodus in Egypt. Okay, there was 600,000 in Egypt. There's been over 4 million Jewish people make Aliyah to the promised land since 1948, and we will continue to see the fishermen fish their people back. Okay, until a certain point that we will go through in the last video of the book series. Okay, and then we believe that 2014, 2015, the blood moon tetrad was the release of Satan's end of the age hunters into Europe because it was the 3rd largest population of the Jewish people in the world. Especially France has the largest Jewish population. We went through that very thoroughly with you, a lot of information for you to prove that 2014, 2015, the Islamic invasion up through the Mediterranean, up through Turkey has caused terror, chaos, civilian unrest, and the government's bowing down. It's important to realize that as we get into America, bowing down to Islam. And that's going to obviously provoke the Jewish people home, the ancient enemies of Israel, the original hunters regions, provoking the people back home. Remember that as we go forward here. So the end of the age fishermen obviously are the Jewish people that fished their people back since 1948. And now we're seeing the hunters, because the prophecy states after the fishermen are released, afterward the hunters will be released. And it occurred on God's faithful witness in the sky, the blood moons. Okay, Psalms 89, the moon is the faithful witness in the sky, an omen of Aliyah, an omen of migration for the Jewish people. And I believe when we get into America now, in this video, we're going to see the beginning, the very, very, very beginning of this prophecy. You're starting to see it come to fruition. It's not like it is in Europe yet, but you're starting to see it manifest itself upon the shores of America. Before we get into those statistics, and we have a lot of information for you, so we do ask you for your patience. We do want to discover America. You know, it ties back into the blood moon in 1493, 1494, the blood moon tetrad. That's when Christopher Columbus sailed the New World, to America, founded America. And since that time, America has been the safest refuge of the Jewish people in the history of the world. There's no question about it. We have harbored the Jewish people from persecution. America has been a great blessing for the Jewish people, but also the Jewish people has been a great blessing to America, and we will get into that as well. Remember Genesis 12:3, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curses you. And that is so profound when we look at America, as we have been the safest refuge of the Jewish people. And obviously America has been blessed for that, which we will get into, because we have to remember before we commence that all of the empires, all of the worldly nations who've come against the Jewish people, they're all destroyed. You look at them, look at Egypt, look at Assyria, look at Rome, look at Germany, look at Spain, which we've discovered. Spain is just a shell of itself after the Spanish Inquisition. So we have to understand, when a nation turns against God's people, the apple of his eye, you know, and the elect, okay, remember they're the elect because of the fathers, Romans 11. They're the elect of the covenants, okay, because of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and David, okay? We have to understand any nation who turns their back on the Jewish people or persecute the Jewish people, that's going to be destruction of that nation. Look at history. They're still here. The Jewish people are still here. All of those nations have fallen, okay? And the state of Israel is still here. And the God of Israel still lives. So it's so important for us as a nation in America, and also as individuals, to understand that important biblical concept. But beginning with the 1500s, the Jewish people migrated from the eastern world to the shores of America because of persecution. In the late 1700s and to the 1800s, as anti-Semitism rose significantly across the world, especially into the European countries, the Jewish population vastly increased in America. For instance, we'll go through a few stats with you. In 1790, 2,000 residents were in America, and by 1840, it was up to 15,000 residents. In 1880, there was 250,000, 250,000 residents by 1880. So 1840, there was 15,000. 40 years later, 250,000. I mean, that's incredible, because of the persecution of the Eastern Europe countries, and also in the Eastern world, if you will. Okay, also in 1880 to 1914, 1.5 million Jewish people immigrated to America. Think about that. It's just growing significantly. 1942, which we all remember that, World War II, 4.3 million were inhabited in America. 1970, 5.4 million, and 2017, 5.7 million. These numbers are estimates, okay, so you're going to see different numbers, but pretty much we get the picture that America has been the safest refuge of the Jewish people in the history of the world. And it's so important to understand that. So it goes back into the prophecy. We are the safest refuge there is. The Jewish people will return back to the promised land, because of the fishermen will fish them back, and ultimately the hunters. So keep that in mind as we go forward, that we have been the safest refuge of the Jewish people. And if America ever turns against the Jewish people, which I believe one day it will happen because of this prophecy, then we're in for a bad time on the shores of America. And the second important point to understand before we go into this further is America has been very prosperous for the Jewish people. So again, safest refuge, prosperity of the Jewish people. And in the 20th century, the Jewish people rose to significant influence and wealth in America. In 1983, economist Thomas Sowell wrote, "Jewish family incomes are the highest of any large ethnic group in the U.S., 72% above the national average, and the social and economic distance covered in a relatively short time makes the Jewish experience in America unique." Think about that. Again, they're the covenant people. God's going to bless them. America has blessed the Jewish people, and the Jewish people have blessed America. And we will go through some of these statistics that I think you can see that there's a cool connection with the Jewish people in America and the prosperity and the safest refuge, the blessings that America has had because of the Jewish people, and some other things that we'll discover. But in the 1980s, Forbes magazine reported that out of 400 richest Americans, more than 100 were Jewish, which was 9 times greater than expectations based on the overall population. Historian Edward Shapiro estimates over 30% of American billionaires are Jewish. Think about that. Over 30% of the American billionaires are Jewish. Again, the blessings of the elect people because of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and David. He also cites a 1986 issue of Financial World that listed the top 100 money makers in 1985. Half of them mentioned were Jewish. Again, the blessings that God pours out on them for America, for the Jewish people. There's a cool correlation there. And this is totally amazing. Incredibly, 37% of all American Nobel Prize winners are Jewish. Think about that. That is totally incredible, and all glory to God for that because of his promises to the covenant people, okay? And we're grafted into that, okay? When you think about it with the Gentiles. So we have to understand that I'm going through this to set this up, that the Jewish people have been safe here, they've been prosperous here in America, and we will see, if that ever turns, then we're not going to be in good shape as America, and I believe we're starting to see the tremblings of that as we go forward, the birth pains, if you will. But obviously America was not perfect during World War II with the immigration of the Jewish people from Europe. We could have done better in that, obviously, but it's so important to understand that we have been that safest refuge of the ones who have been a part of the American experience. Also, with our support of 1948, when the state of Israel, Harry Truman, with the support of the state of Israel, I can make the case that America has been greatly blessed because of the Genesis 12:3 promise or curse. Bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. We have been a great blessing, America has, to the Jewish people, and vice versa, and they have been very prosperous in America, and I believe America has been blessed, and a lot of grace has been shown upon America because of those two things, the Jewish people and also the state of Israel, with some of the abominations that we have allowed into our the laws of the land, speaking of abortion and also same-sex marriage. So I believe the Lord has shown a lot of grace because our support for that, and it's just really important to understand. And when you look at the chart from 1948 with the U.S. GDP chart, you can see the rise, you can see the prosperity, you can see the dominant nation. That occurred after 1948. I mean, it just only inclined further. Again, goes to the point, bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you. So the question is in this video, why would the Jewish people return back to the promised land, back to Israel, when Israel surrounded, we went through it last week, Israel surrounded with chaos. They're surrounded with war, with terror, with civilian unrest. Look at all the nations around them. They want to wipe them off the map. Why would any Jewish person want to return back to that in the chaos? They would not. However, that goes to the point where America, eventually, it will turn against the Jewish people. America eventually will not be the safest refuge for the Jewish people. Israel will, to a certain point, and we'll go through that in the last video. But America eventually will not be prosperous. You know, we will have this because the two things that people hang on to, if you're a Jewish person, is it's safe here, and also it is prosperous here, unlike any other nation in the world. And Israel will be that ultimate protection for them at a certain marker that we will get into. Okay, so now let's read the prophecy again just to give clarification of this in Jeremiah 16. In Jeremiah 16, 14 through 17, it says, "Therefore, behold, the days are coming, says the Lord, that it shall no more be said, the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of Egypt, but the Lord lives who brought up the children of Israel from the land of the north and from all the lands, including America, where he had driven them. For I will bring them back into their land, which I gave their fathers. Behold, I will send for many fishermen, says the Lord, and they shall fish them. And afterward I will send for many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain, every hill, and out of the holes of the rocks. For my eyes are on all their ways, they are not hidden from my face, nor is their iniquity hidden from my eyes. Again, this is a very sobering prophecy at the end, but basically, like we said in the beginning, there's going to be a greater exodus than Egypt, which there already has been. From 1948, over 4 million Jewish people have made Aliyah or returned back to the promised land. Okay, and then afterward, he said he's going to send the hunters to provoke them back. And when it says from every nation, that means every nation. That means including America, and it goes in from every mountain, every hill, from the holes of the rock. So he's telling us that there's going to be, the Jewish people are going to return by the fishermen, by the hunters afterwards. And we have to understand this as believers, to stand with our brethren, to stand with the Jewish people, to prepare them. Number one, to spread the gospel to them. They need the gospel as a nation, but we need to be a light to them. We need to be refuge for them. We need to be assisting them, and really all people in the world. That's our job as the Great Commission, no matter who they are, to spread the gospel and follow the second commandment, which is to love thy neighbor. So it's important to realize this, what we're going to see, and it will not only affect the Jewish people, this prophecy, it will affect all believers in Yeshua. Jesus is coming for all of us, and we're going to get into that. So it's just not for them. In my opinion, they will be provoked back, but also it's coming. I think we can all see that when we look at our nation, when we look at the world, what's going on against the believers in Jesus, and also the Jewish people will be a part of that as well. So there's going to be a greater Aliyah, and when I say that, there's the second largest population of the Jewish people are in America, so we have to understand that. Just like we discovered in Europe last week, the third largest. Look at Europe. It's not by coincidence. On the blood moons, 2014, 2015, and I believe there's going to be a greater exodus. Of course, there is from America, the second largest population of the Jewish people. Okay, so remember, the fishermen were released in 1948. They will continue to call their people back when they're seeing, just like we discovered with Netanyahu last week. He saw what was going on in Europe. He prophetically called them back. He's a fisherman. The defense minister called them back. Okay, so they are fishermen. They will fish their people back until a certain point that we will get into in the time of Jacob's trouble. Okay, but it's important to realize that from 1973 to 2016, an average of 2,500 Jewish people a year made Aliyah from America to the Promised Land. Well, think about it. We have approximately 6 million Jewish people here, so obviously that's not a lot. Percentage-wise, 2,500 a year pretty much make Aliyah to the Promised Land, which, thank God, that's part of the prophecy that you're seeing fulfilled. But statistically, there's going to be a greater Aliyah coming from America. So we have to realize that. But just like we discovered in the video in Europe last week with the end of the age hunters, we know those to be the Islamists, the radicals, the extremists who hate the God of Israel, who hate the Jewish people, and they are provoking that old ghost to rise again with the right-wing extremists, the white supremacists, whatever you want to call them, the Nazis. You're seeing all of this anti-Semitism rise in Europe like you've never seen since that time of World War II. And I believe you're starting to see the beginning of this when we go through the statistics in America as well. So now, before we go through those statistics, let's see what is the cause of it. Has America allowed an Islamic invasion? Now, this is going to look differently than the one in Europe, in my opinion, just because we have guns here. We don't have an abolishment of guns, and we have a lot of guns in America, so it's not going to be come over and just start chopping people's heads off. That's not going to be the case. It's going to be a political jihad. It's going to be an education infiltration. It's going to be a government infiltration. It's going to be political jihad. That's the way. And then what I was discussing earlier will come about once you do not bow down to Islam. So has our government, has our U.S. Congress, has our presidents bow down to Islam? And the answer is absolutely yes. And we're going to go through a lot of statistics. We're going to go through a lot of avenues to understand this, because it's important to understand how they're doing this through this invasion of our country. And I want to be very clear, I love the Muslim people. It's not about the Muslim people. To a certain degree, it's about Islam. And Islam takes no backseat to no religion. If you do your research, it's going to be the dominant religion wherever it is. And then the radicals and the extremists and the Islamists who are for this, they're going to try to implement that. Look at Europe. Look what's going on in America, and we're going to bring some of this to light. So the first that we would like to discover is the country of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is no doubt the financial influence in America more than any other person, because of the oil, because of the money, and we're going to get into this. And again, this is the region of Ishmael. This is the region of Esau, okay, the original hunters, the ancient enemies of the Jewish people, the ancient enemies of Israel, the God of Israel, etc. It is a theocratic monarchy, as we all know, with a legal system based on the strictest form of Islam, Sharia law, but it's called Wahhabism, and we're going to go into that, where their citizens, they receive very harsh punishments, including death, for violating certain laws that they have. So we have to understand that Islam is the greatest false religion in the world. There's no question. I know some of the prophecy teachers out there would state that Rome is the Catholic Church. I'm not taking up for the Catholic Church. There's a lot of theological issues there with what they believe. But Islam is the one who directly comes against what we find holy. Okay, and we're going to go through this in next week's video in more depth. But the things that we call holy, the virgin birth, the crucifixion, the resurrection, the Holy Trinity, etc., they go directly against that. They go directly against that. So we have to understand that they are the greatest false religion in the world, no question asked. And in my opinion, they are the great harlot that we see in Revelation 17 and 18. And we're not going to go through that. But if you remember what it says in Revelation 17 and 18, I saw a woman, okay, the harlot, wine, and fornication. Fornication is spiritual adultery, basically. Okay, so it's a symbolism for spiritual adultery against the true God. And how do they spread it? Through their wine. Well, wine is symbolic, from my opinion, is oil. They are the largest producers of oil, Saudi Arabia. So again, he's using symbolism, John is, oil for wine, or wine for oil, and then they are going to spread their doctrine, the strictest form of Islam, across the world because of the oil that makes the kings drunk. Okay, so it's pretty clear with that. So a lot of this goes into that. In my belief, they've made the kings drunk, including the presidents of the United States. And we have to understand that this is where Islam originated from. It's the womb of Islam. Okay, think of Mecca, Medina, the two holiest cities in Islam is in Saudi Arabia. Okay, it's in Saudi Arabia, and it's where its evil roots originated from in AD 610, in the 7th century. So it's important to understand that Islam is the world's second largest religion, and it's the fastest growing one, with over 1.8 billion followers. And we definitely need to be praying for them to come out of the harlot and to follow the true king, Jesus, Yeshua. And it's about 24% of the global population that are Muslim. Okay, interesting enough, in 2017, Saudi Arabia was ranked the most religious country in the world and 9th among the most powerful countries. A lot of that credit is because of America as well, because you're going to see an alliance there, and it's not a good alliance. And like we've discovered, the two holiest cities in Islam, Mecca and Medina, are located in Saudi Arabia, and the holiest sacred site, the blasphemous Kaaba shrine, where 15 million Muslims visit annually, is where they go around the Kaaba stone, which unfortunately makes it one of the most visited locations on the face of the earth. So this is something, this is the beast. It's not the actual beast, but it's part of the beast in unison with the beast. The beast will come out of the Turkey area. but it's in unison together. Remember Revelation 17:18, I saw a woman riding a beast. So Saudi Arabia will be in partnership with the beast kingdom, which if you keep up with our ministry, we believe that is Turkey, Iraq, Syria area, the Middle East, North Africa. It will be a unison together. Saudi Arabia will, and it is a deadly combination there. So how will Saudi Arabia spread its Islam, Wahhabism to America? Well, that's very simple. It's called oil, just like we've discovered. And we're going to go through some of these statistics and kind of catch it up to date of how this deadly unison partnership came about, from the early stages. Okay, so before the Ottoman Empire collapsed in 1923, it controlled most of the Arabian Peninsula, with the Arabians, or Ishmael, occupying the other areas of the region. After the Ottoman Empire collapsed, King Abdul Aziz gained power and control over the region, including its capital, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. In 1932, the region was named the Kingdom of Saud, and by the time of his death in 1953, it stretched from the Persian Gulf to the Red Sea and from Iraq to Yemen. In the 1930s, as Saud obtained complete power and control over Saudi Arabia, the Saudis discovered massive oil reserves in their land, which would eventually change the geopolitical and religious landscape of the world. Subsequently, Aramco, an Arabian American oil company, was formed, and the Great Harlot began to spew its fundamentalist ideology and financial perversion all over the world, including America. Saudi Arabia would come to have the largest proven crude oil reserves and largest daily oil production in the world until 2011, which was overtaken by Venezuela. As of recent years, Aramco's value has been estimated between $1.25 trillion and $10 trillion, making it the world's most valuable company. Although Saudi government obtained a complete control of Aramco in 1980 by acquiring a 100% stake in the company, America's soul had already been sold to the Great Harlot. As of this video, the Saudis' perpetual adulterous influence in the U.S. government, federal agencies, and politicians, including presidents, has significantly increased since their total control over Aramco. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is the originator, manufacturer, and major financer and supporter of the world's most fundamentalist form of Sunni Islam, called Wahhabism. During Saud's reign from 1932 to 1953, he instituted Wahhabism, which was agreed upon by the alliance between his family and Muhammad Wahhab, the father of Wahhabism, and it is the strictest form of Sunni Islam. It controls and neglects the basic human rights of society, including women, in the form of free speech, expression, controlled prayer and behavior, conformity of dress code, business and leisure activities, lifestyle choices, and many other God-given rights. The Saudi government forces excessive and extreme measures in establishing obedience to the strict rules of Wahhabism, which includes public beatings, executions, imprisonment for breaking one of the least of its requirements. Saudi Arabia's human rights record is a clear indicator of this inhumane governing, because according to the International Human Rights Rank Indicator, it poorly ranks 205 out of 216 countries. Nevertheless, Wahhabi fundamentalism continues in Saudi Arabia to this day, and Ashik, Saudi Arabia's leading religious family, are descendants of Wahhab. In fact, Salman bin Abdul Aziz, who is the current king of Saudi Arabia, proclaims Wahhabism is pure Islam. In the past few decades, it is estimated the Great Harlot has spent upward of $100 billion of their petrodollars to spread Wahhabi Sunni Islam, between $2 billion and $3 billion per year since 1975, and at least $87 billion from 1987 to 2007. Think about that. No wonder it's the second largest religion in the world and the fastest growing. You can't compete with the petrodollars. Tens of billions of dollars were also spent in non-Islamic nations, 200 universities, 210 Islamic centers, 1,500 mosques, 4,000 imams or preachers and missionaries, 2,000 schools for Muslim children, book materials, media subsidies to reward journalists and Islamic scholars. All of these petrodollars were spent in Asia, Africa, Europe, and North America for the widespread regard of Wahhabi Sunni Islam. The tens of billions of dollars in petro-Islam funded an estimated 90% of the expenses of the entire faith. Wow. Which is staggering, and it includes funding terrorist organizations. During this time, Wahhabism procured a preeminent position of strength in the global expression of Islam, which is the strictest form, commands Muslims to hate infidels for their religion, for Allah's sake, and it declares democracy is responsible for all the horrible wars in the 20th century. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is not only the womb where Islam was birthed, but its Wahhabi Sunni doctrine is also the predominant theological and ideological fountain and financer of Islamic terrorist groups such as Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, Boko Haram, Al-Nusra Front, the Taliban, and others. These groups, the extremist groups, along with other terrorist nations, are guilty of the escalated and widespread violence that we have witnessed in the Middle East, North Africa, and Europe since 2003, which we discovered in last week's video. And Saudi Arabia finances and supports all of these terrorist groups, which makes it arguably the most prolific sponsor of Islamic terrorism across the globe. So it's important to understand when we look at Saudi Arabia, and we went through the information in a very summarized way. I go in great detail in the book, but we have to understand that Saudi Arabia is where the wound is. It sponsors all of these things, the petrodollars, the money, again, Revelation 17:18, the spread, the fornication, the spiritual adultery of Islam, and they're going to use the power over the kings, if you will, including America's presidents, to spread this. And we have to understand that they are the ancient enemy, the Ishmael, Esau, as a whole. Okay, I know plenty of Saudi believers that are beautiful people, okay, but when we talk about the region, they are going to be against the God of Israel. They're going to be against the Jewish people. Okay, so former Florida Senator Bob Graham stated this: Saudi Arabia has not stopped its interest in spreading extreme Wahhabism. ISIS is a product of Saudi ideals, Saudi money, and Saudi organizational support, although now they are making a pretense of being very anti-ISIS. You can't really believe the news reports how Saudi Arabia is really being kosher, if you will, with Israel, because deep down they hate Israel. Okay, and they're fooling them. Okay, they're being very conniving with them, saying they're going to support them openly in the media. But let's not fall for that, because you're going to see, as we go towards the end of the age, you're going to see the harlot and the beast kingdom come against the children of Israel, the Jewish people, Israel, at the end. Former CIA Director James Woolsey describes Saudi Arabia as the soil in which Al-Qaeda and its sister terrorist organizations are flourishing. Again, it's the womb that sponsors all of these with the petrodollars, and the American government is tied into that. Okay, in 2015, the Vice Chancellor of Germany, Sigmar Gabriel, accused Saudi Arabia of supporting religious extremism, proclaiming Wahhabi mosques are financed all over the world by Saudi Arabia. So now let's, since we went through that information, now let's look at how Saudi Arabia and America, the correlation between Saudi Arabia and the American government, including the presidents, which is actually a disgrace, as you will see. Okay, so once the partnership of Aramco, remember they were partners in 1930 with Aramco, the oil company, it has perpetuated through the lineage of the U.S. presidents. I mean, what comes to mind when I talk about this, I see there was a book, written about George Bush and the Saudi king holding hands together. We all remember Obama bowing down to the king as well. So I'm going to hit on Republican and Democrat. Okay, it's both parties. It's really one conglomerate party, as we have seen over the recent years. They're all together, the Republicans and the Democrats, the presidents, all of them together are in it together. So we're going to hit on both Republican and Democrats, so we're going to be fair and balanced with this. But just to give you an idea about the disgrace, and we have to understand, just like in any business deal, if I donate money, a significant amount of money in a business deal, then I'm going to expect a return on my investment. Okay, that's just common business sense. And this is no difference with Saudi Arabia. They're just not going to give their money and not expect influence in our country, in our nation. I believe that's just common sense, much less common business sense. But even our president, starting with Jimmy Carter, his foundation, King Saud, a founding member of the Carter Center. Okay, so Jimmy Carter is supposed to be a believer, but he is an anti-Semite. I think you can do your own research on that as well, but he is an anti-Semite in my opinion, and one of the founding members of the Carter Center was King Saud of Saudi Arabia. Think about that, a founding member. Tens of millions of dollars donated over the years. Think about that. That buys influence. That buys a lot of influence in our country. In 1993 alone, King Fahd, the late King Fahd, gifted $7.6 million to it, while more recently the King's nephew donated at least $5 million to the Carter Center. Again, even though he's not the president, we see he's still active in the political field at times, and it does buy influence. And now the Bush family. The Bush family were big supporters of Saudi Arabia. They still are. They're still in cohesion with them. And they have received $1.476 billion in all of their companies together from yours truly, Saudi Arabia. Okay, so we have to understand that. That is a disgrace. You don't think $1.476 billion will provide a lot of influence in America? Absolutely, including 9/11, with 14 of the 19 hijackers from Saudi Arabia. And where does Bush go? He goes to Iraq. Okay, he does not go to Saudi Arabia. So you can do what you want to with that. I believe it's influence. I believe it's partnership. I believe we have been sold down the river by Republican and Democrat presidents, congressmen, you name it, and we're going to get more into it. And the Clintons have received 10 to 25 million in donations to their foundation, the Clinton organization, or to the foundation. So we have to understand those are just some examples of our presidents. These are presidents. George W. Bush, well, his father was the same way, okay, like father, like son. So George Herbert Walker Bush, George W. Bush, the Clintons, all of these, Jimmy Carter, all of the presidents, Republican and Democrat, have been selling America down the river, including our Congress, including the lobbyists, and it is an absolute disgrace, and you're going to see the results of that influence as we go further down there. So now let's speak about the influence of Saudi Arabia in the U.S. government. We just mentioned the presidents. Let's go through it with the U.S. government. Throughout the 20th century, the benefits of the partnership between Saudi Arabia and America were one-sided, to say the least. The great harlot, which in my opinion Saudi Arabia has sold oil to America at prices at its own discretion. In exchange, the U.S. government foolishly provides them with military support and ignorantly turns a blind eye to their inhumane and abysmal religious atrocities. Saudi Arabian petrodollars and lobbyists have also endangered America's sovereignty, which ultimately will release Satan's end-of-the-age hunters in America. The most effective lobbyist, and you can do your research, Saudi lobbyist was Prince Bender. He was the ambassador to Saudi Arabia to the U.S. from 1983 to 2005, who was fundamentally influential for the Great Harlot. He effectively joined the Bush administration as a virtual member of the cabinet. The Economist reported no Arab ambassador, perhaps no ambassador, has come close to matching Prince Bender's influence in the American capital. Why would he have influence? I mean, what's the point of this? At the height of his powers, he was indispensable to both sides. In Mr. Ottaway's words, at once the king's exclusive messenger, Saudi Arabia, and the White House's errand boy. Again, there's a correlation between Saudi Arabia and America. Just in the first decade of the 21st century, the Saudis paid an estimated $100 million to American firms to lobby the U.S. government for the Great Harlot's agenda, which is to transform America into a Wahhabi-style Islamic state. This is a long process. It doesn't happen overnight. They are very patient. It goes slowly, and then all of a sudden you have it. What is more disturbing about the drunkenness of the U.S. government is the Saudi lobbying mostly occurred after the 9/11 attacks, which is absolutely astonishing, insulting, and reckless, because 15 of the 19 hijackers of the 4 airliners on 9/11 originated from Saudi Arabia. Think about that, after 9/11. Since 2015, which is after 9/11, obviously, Saudi Arabia has paid $18 million to 145 registered lobbyists to influence the U.S. government for its propaganda and agenda. Obviously, clearly, The U.S. government has cowardly bowed down to the almighty petrodollar, and the consequential aftermath will not be in favor of the children of Israel and, frankly, all believers in Messiah, because Satan's hunters will be released into America. And now let's go through what has been the overall result of the Saudis' oil, the petrodollars, the luxury, and the lobbying in America. What has America received in return? Again, Saudi Arabia is going to get a return on their investment. But what has America received for this as well? After all the lobbying, after all the petrodollars were invested into America, this is what's happened. Since 2001, which again was after the devastating 9/11 attacks, 14 of the 19 were Saudis, more than 900 mosques have been erected in America, which is an 80% increase from approximately 300 mosques before 2001, and the overwhelming majority was financed by Saudi Arabia. The Great Harlot also finances the majority of imams, preachers of the mosque in America, and the peaceful, quote, curriculum in these mosques is Wahhabi Sunni Islam. According to a report by Freedom House, a Washington-based non-governmental organization, said this: Wahhabi influence over Islamic institutions in the U.S. were considered by 2003, which reported from a testimony before the U.S. Senate. To support this testimony, on July 25, 2017, Imam Ammar Shaheen of the Islamic Center of David in Northern California was caught on camera encouraging American Muslims to eliminate Jewish people, and he prayed for their death. The Wahhabi Sunni Islam teacher also led a prayer in response to the metal detectors being placed at the Temple Mount in response to a Muslim terrorist attack, declaring, "Liberate the Al-Aqsa Mosque from the filth of the Jews, which is located by the Temple Mount, and annihilate them to the very last one." Since 2004, Saudi Arabia has been designated as a country of particular concern under the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998 for participating in severe violations of religious freedom. According to the report by Freedom House, the Saudi government and its affiliates published hundreds of publications filled with hatred and intolerance towards Christians, Jews, and other Americans, which was disseminated across the country by 2006. The report concluded the Saudi government propaganda examines reflect a totalitarian ideology of hatred that can incite to violence. It is being mainstreamed within our borders through the effort of a foreign government, namely Saudi Arabia, and it demands our urgent attention. Surely it does. By 2013, 75% of North American Islamic mosques and centers relied on Wahhabi preachers who promote anti-American ideas in person and online through sermons of Saudi-produced literature. Again, the wound is Saudi Arabia. According to the U.S. intelligence officials in 2013 of September, hundreds of millions of dollars were still flowing to Muslim terrorists from private donors in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In 2016 of May, it was reported the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia had spent untold millions promoting Wahhabism, the radical form of Islam, Sunni Islam that inspired the 9/11 hijackers and that now inflames the Islamic State. That was back in 2016. Furthermore, Saudi Prince bin Talal has invested 27 million of the petrodollars to support Palestinian suicide bombers, and ironically, he just happens to be the largest shareholder in News Corp, which is the parent company of Fox News. So is this a religion? Is this a country we should allow into our borders, okay, with lobbyists and all of these things, with mosque after 9/11? This tells you of the influence that Saudi Arabia has obtained through the U.S. government, through the CIA, through the American presidents, as we've discussed, Republican and Democrat. They're all together, in my opinion, and they have sold us down the river. For sure, the Statue of Liberty is laying on the beach shores of New York right now because they have sold us down the river completely, and you're seeing the results of it, and you will continue to see the results of this Wahhabism, Sunni Islam, the hatred of the Jewish people, the hatred of America, the hatred of the believers. All of us we need to be paying attention to this. Okay, so Saudi Arabia is the first one, and now we're going to go through the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is another Sunni Islamic fundamentalist organization that has obtained significant status within the U.S. government as well. And we're going to go through this as well in bullet points to give you an idea of the Muslim Brotherhood if you're not familiar with this organization as well, and some of the spin-off organizations that they have. They're an organization to pay attention to, as well as Saudi Arabia. This political, religious, yet terrorist organization was founded by Hassan al-Banna in Egypt in 1928. He was extremely clear on the Brotherhood's ultimate goals for not only America, but for the whole world. He declared this: "It is in the nature of Islam to dominate, not to be dominated, to impose its law on all nations, and to extend its power to the entire planet." Please note the terrorist group Hamas is directly associated with the Muslim Brotherhood, and its charter calls for the murder of Jews, the obliteration of Israel, and Israel's replacement with an Islamist theocracy. The Muslim Brotherhood unequivocally believes in the establishment of Sharia law based on the Quran and the Sunnah, which is the oral account of the teachings, deeds, and sayings of the Islamic prophet Muhammad. The terrorist organization believes the Quran and the Sunni are the sole reference point for ordering the life of a Muslim family, individual, community, and state. The Muslim Brotherhood's motto and slogans include "Islam is the solution," "Allah is our objective," "The Prophet is our leader," and "The Quran is our law." "Jihad is our way," "Dying in the way of God is our highest hope," "God is greater." Think about that. That's their motto, that's their slogan. The Muslim Brotherhood's initial goal was to build a transnational organization, as groups were founded in Lebanon, Syria, and Transjordan, with its strategic headquarters for the whole Muslim world located in Cairo, Egypt. Other Brotherhood organizations were founded in Tunisia, Morocco, Algeria, Afghanistan, and Malaysia. As of 1994, an international agency of the terrorist organization assures the cooperation of the assembly of its national organizations. From 1936 to 1938, the Muslim Brotherhood grew from 800 million to 200,000, and by 1948, think about State of Israel, the Fisherman released, it had over 2 million members. Wow, in 10 to 12 years. It is worthy to note that for a half century, Saudi Arabia financed the Muslim Brotherhood because the two shared similar doctrine and interest. That has subsided lately, but the Muslim Brotherhood has approximately 80 chapters and organizations across the world. As of 2015, the Muslim Brotherhood has been labeled a terrorist organization by Egypt, Russia, Syria, the UAE, and ironically, Saudi Arabia. And just like we discovered, they did finance the Muslim Brotherhood for over half a century, but they became estranged during the Gulf War and after the election of a Muslim Brotherhood member, Mohammed Morsi, in Egypt in 2012, which we went through the Egyptian revolution. That was part of it. The Muslim Brotherhood, they went separate ways after that with some differences. But this is really important to understand Saudi Arabia and also the Muslim Brotherhood. They are the two main factors in what we're going to see in America, and it's important to keep your eyes on these two and see what comes out of it. But since 1953, after the Muslim Brotherhood met with U.S. President Dwight D. Eisenhower in the Oval Office, the terrorist group has received a false reputation of credibility and tolerance in America. Think about what we just went through. There is no tolerance in Islam. It's a one-way street. In 1963, the United States chapter of the Muslim Brotherhood was created through the Muslim Students Association. In the following decades, other front organizations were specifically created in America for the Muslim Brotherhood to infiltrate the U.S. government and the education system, which was the North America Islamic Trust, the International Institute of Islamic Thought, Islamic Society of North America, the American Muslim Council, Muslim American Society, the Council of American Islamic Relations. Again, these are front organizations of the Muslim Brotherhood. The radicals, they come in peace, but it's really a, if you will, political jihad. Okay, this is not going to turn out good, and we will continue to go through this. Without any doubt, we have to understand that the Muslim Brotherhood, they want to infiltrate the U.S. government, just like Saudi Arabia, and they want to politically collapse it. They want to politically collapse it from inside out, if you will, overturning the Constitution, the laws, and thereby implementing Wahhabism, or Sharia law, which is Islam's evil doctrine. In 1988, an FBI informant inside the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood reported the Muslim Brotherhood was in the first of 6 phases to institute the Islamic Revolution in the United States. Wow, that's 1988. The overall objective is to peacefully get inside the United States government and also American universities and ultimately change the Constitution of America. This is their objective. This is from the FBI about the U.S., the Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S., and it goes with Saudi Arabia's goals as well for America. Omar Ahmed, who is the chairman of the Board of Care, which is a Muslim Brotherhood front organization, he declared this: Islam isn't in America to be equal to any other faith, but to be the dominant. The Quran should be the highest authority in America, and Islam the only accepted religion on the earth. A lot of people look at CARE as a tolerant, moderate organization, but in fact they are the opposite. They are the radicals, just like the Muslim Brotherhood and just like the harlot Saudi Arabia. The Muslim Brotherhood believes America is an apostate nation with infidels that does not champion moral and human values and cannot lead humanity. The Brotherhood calls for political and religious jihad against its enemies, Israel and America, because waging jihad against both of these infidels is a commandment of Allah that cannot be disregarded. In 1982, a document titled The Muslim Brotherhood Project was discovered in Switzerland. In 2005, Scott Burgess, he translated it into English. It outlined in detail a global vision of worldwide strategy for Islamic policy, or what we call political Islam. In 2007, during the Holy Land Foundation trial, which was a terror financing trial, a 1991 document written by Muhammad Akram Adluni, the explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America, was discovered in 2004 FBI raid of a Virginia home and admitted as an exhibit. This document outlined in detail the strategy and intentions of the Muslim Brotherhood in America, which included eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within. Again, they're not going to come at first and cut people's heads off. They're coming politically first, and then they will go out. And then that could occur. So they're going to get the government first, the education system first, and then they're going to go do their thing after that. This clearly explains to all Americans, including the intoxicated U.S. government, the Muslim Brotherhood's plan to infiltrate the political system, attempt to overthrow the American Constitution. In the U.S. Congress, there have been attempts to pass legislation to criminalize and label the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, but to no avail. Again, Republicans and Democrats are guilty of this. U.S. Senator Ted Cruz and U.S. Representative Mario Diaz-Balart introduced the Muslim Brotherhood Terrorist Designation Act of 2015, but again, unfortunately, the bill did not pass. Interesting enough, this bill was introduced after Egypt, Russia, Syria, UAE, and Saudi Arabia designated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. Again, Republican and Democrat, what are you thinking? So we have to understand, why did they do this? Why did the U.S. Congress, why do the presidents continue to bow down to Saudi Arabia, continue to bow down to the Muslim Brotherhood? Well, it's easy. It's about money. It's about power. It's about oil. It's about the harlot's agenda. And the Muslim Brotherhood is a part of that as well, with their ideals for America. Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood have separate ways, but at the same time, when it all comes down, they are in the same camp of the destruction of America according to the Islam's doctrine. So we have to understand, now we're going to discover George Bush and also Barack Obama. Again, Republican and Democrat. We're going to hit both of them because they're all guilty. And we're going to go for both of them because it's astonishing. It's a disgrace what both of these gentlemen have done, Republican and Democrat, George Bush and Barack Obama. And we're going to go through that with the Muslim Brotherhood, or about the Muslim Brotherhood, especially because they were the cause of the Egyptian revolutions, as we discovered in last week's video. They were the cause of the Egyptian revolutions. Mohammed Morsi, Muslim Brotherhood, and that was a revolution to get him out of there as well. And why didn't they designate the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization after that? Because they basically went and upheavaled the Egyptian government. It's totally amazing about. It's very clear once you do your research and once you do the understanding. Again, Republican and Democrat, they're all in it together, and they have bowed down to Saudi Arabia. They've bowed down to the Muslim Brotherhood. Claire Lopez, a former CIA officer, claims the Muslim Brotherhood achieved information dominance during George W. Bush's presidency, and it escalated in the Barack Obama administration. The Gatestone Institute wrote this, or she wrote this at the Gatestone Institute. The careful insinuation of Muslim brotherhoods into positions from which they can exercise influence on U.S. policy began long before the 9/11 attacks, although their success has accelerated dramatically under the administration of President Barack Obama. So again, George Bush, Barack Obama has allowed information to the Muslim Brotherhood, is what she has written, and we can obviously see that especially into the Barack Obama administration. And throughout his administration, which was for 8 years, many critics have wondered, is Obama Muslim? And I have no idea what he is. I'm not sure if he understands what he is. But with that being said, we can definitely say that he has leaned and he has favored the Islamic doctrine more than Christianity. There is no question about that when you just look at his actions and look at who he supports. I believe he said if the political winds shift, in one of his books, Audacity of Hope, or one of his other books, if the political winds shift, he will take the side of the Muslims. Okay, and that's his words, that's not my words, and you can do your own research on that. But we'll go through a few bullet points that are very disturbing about Barack Obama, and it starts with his half-brother Malik Obama, who is directly linked to the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, which validates why the former president supported Mohammed Morsi's, again, Muslim Brotherhood. Obama supported his election in Egypt. Malik Obama oversees the Muslim Brotherhood's international investments, and according to an Egyptian report which cites the vice presidents of the Supreme Constitutional Court of Egypt, he said this: Malik Obama is one of the architects of the major investments of the Muslim Brotherhood. If President Obama was against this, he would have come out against his brother, but in fact he supported Mohammed Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, which is disturbing to say the least. Although a few of the mainstream media covered and announced this troubling connection with the Obamas before the former president was elected, most of the lamestream media, politicians, and Americans foolishly disregarded these indicting connections and remained politically correct. That's what it was. This is why former President Barack Obama was so adamant about protecting and defending Islam during his 8-year term. That's for sure. According to former Department of Homeland Security Officer Philip Haney, who actually was found dead February 2020, and everybody can do what they want to with that, who worked under the Obama administration, he was ordered to eliminate all information that incriminated the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization. You have to ask yourself, why? Why is this occurring? Haney stated, "I can't explain to you the ideology or the worldview of this Obama administration that makes them so adamant to protect Islam from harm by addressing it in its true nature, which is Wahhabism, which is the strictest form of Islam." Haney believes if we don't find the wherewithal to address the nature of the threat we face realistically, courageously, and honestly, we're going to find ourselves confronted with a dragon who will become capable of devouring us if we are not careful. And he is absolutely correct about that as we go forward with the invasion of the government, invasion of the educational system, which we're about to get into, the open borders. America is in trouble with the religion of radical Islam. Islam at its purest is Wahhabism, just like we've discovered. So now let's look at some of the quotes. We're going to go from the New York best-selling authors Aaron Klein and also Brenda J. Elliott's book, The Impeachable Offenses, The Case to Remove Barack Obama from Office. These are the quotes. These are the research that they have done, and it's just showing what he did during his administration by allowing this wound of Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood to be birthed into America, if you will. It's been birthed even before Obama, with George Bush, with Jimmy Carter. Again, Republican and Democrat. I'm not just hitting on Obama, I'm hitting on all of them. Okay, the presidents, the U.S. Congress, Republican, Democrat, not passing these bills that a few of the remnant of good senators have addressed with the Congress. It's a total disgrace, and it all goes back into the almighty, in this case, petrodollar, not the almighty dollar. Okay, so we want to go through these, and this is quotes from their book. It documents that Obama assisted Islamic extremist groups rise to power in the Middle East, which is the Arab Spring. That is, of course, you look at Libya, look at what they did with Gaddafi, not taking up for Gaddafi, but look at what they did with Egypt, with Morsi, etc. So, of course, they were involved with this. Hillary Clinton as well, including the Muslim Brotherhood, because its members were allowed to serve on important American anti-terrorism security advisory boards. Think about that. The Muslim Brotherhood were able to serve on these advisory boards. I mean, this is absolutely insanity. In fact, Mohammed, I won't try to pronounce his last name, an Egyptian-born Muslim Brotherhood operative and former senior advisor to Obama, unbelievably served 5 years on the former president's Homeland Security Advisory Council. Think about that. Muslim Brotherhood on the Homeland Security Advisory Council. I mean, this is just incredible. The book also substantiates the Obama administration could have leaked out and exposed national security and classified information through Hillary Clinton's Deputy Chief of Staff, Huma Abedin, who has personal and family associations to the Muslim Brotherhood and Saudi Arabia. As of March 19, 2017, Judicial Watch released 1,184 pages of State Department records, including previously unreleased Hillary Clinton email exchanges, revealing additional instances of Abedin and Clinton sending classified information through unsecured email accounts and contributors being given special access to the former Secretary of State. You can't make this stuff up. Abedin was on the executive board of the Muslim Student Association, which again is a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood. In the Holy Land Foundation trial in 2007, which we mentioned above, there was an additional document introduced that confirmed the Muslim Brotherhood's association with MSA, and it also authenticates its overall goal for the land of the free. It states, Muslim Brotherhood members must understand that their work in America is kind of grand jihad in eliminating and destroying the Western civilization from within and sabotaging its miserable house by the hands of the believers, so that it is eliminated and Allah's religion is made victorious over all other religions. Again, does this sound like someone that our presidents and our U.S. Congress need to be in cahoots with? From 1995 to 2008, Abedin worked at the Journal of Muslim Minority Affairs, which is the Sharia law journal whose editor-in-chief was her own mother. Additionally, her mother sits on the Presidency Staff Council of the International Islamic Council for Dawah and Relief, an organization chaired by the leader of the Muslim Brotherhood. Abedin's father, who was a professor in Saudi Arabia, again, you got Arabia, you got Muslim Brotherhood, who founded the Institute for Muslim Minority Affairs, which Saudi Arabia supported along with the Muslim World League. According to former federal prosecutor Andrew McCarthy, the Muslim World League is perhaps the most significant Muslim Brotherhood association or organization in the world. A Saudi government document inspired by Huma Abedin's father explains the concept and goal of Muslim Minority Affairs is to establish global Sharia in our modern times. Let's not forget that this person who was Hillary Clinton's confidant for several years, which is very disturbing to say the least, and former Defense Secretary Robert Gates, who worked under the Obama administration, emphatically proclaims, we've got Muslim Brotherhood in the U.S. government today, at least 10 or 15 of them in the U.S. government. So we have to understand, and then we all know when we look at the U.S. Congress, even right now, even today, you look at the openness of the U.S. Congress, the women who are Islamic supporters, and some of them are Islamic, they're called the Squad. You probably know who I'm going to say. I'm not even going to mention their names, but they're the squad. They're openly anti-Israel. They're openly hatred for America. They're openly wanting to do what these things that we've discussed with Islam, with the Wahhabists, with Saudi Arabia, with the Muslim Brotherhood. We need to open our eyes and see what's going on. Look at the elections in 2018. Look at the elections in 2020. I mean, they are Muslim Brotherhood, they are Islamics, and they're radicals. Okay, I'm not against the Muslim people. I love the Muslim people. But these people are radicals. These people are extremists. They want to tear down America. So if we don't get wise and quit being politically correct and tolerant of this. Now, I'm a Judeo-Christian, okay? I'm a believer. I believe that everybody can worship according to what they want to worship by. But when there is a religion that goes against what we were founded on, that wants to take down what we were founded on in America, then there's a problem. Obviously, there's a problem. We are a Judeo-Christian nation, not an Islamic nation. Okay, we never will be, hopefully. But we have to understand that we are in a battle for America's soul. The presidents, the U.S. Congress, the serpents and the vipers, as I call them, they have allowed and they have bowed down and they have sold our soul to the Islamists, to Saudi Arabia, to the Muslim Brotherhood, and to others, China, etc. You know, of course they have, but this Islamic doctrine, they take no back seat, if you will, to no one. To no one. They're going to be the dominant, and they've done it through political jihad, through the U.S. government, through the oil, through the wound of Saudi Arabia, and we have got to get smart, or we're going to have major problems, and the release of Satan's end of the age hunters are going to come alive. You're going to see them being activated. That will provoke the Jewish people to return to the promised land. This is not to set any kind of dates, but when you look at the end of the age, you can kind of see this coming to America. So now let's look at the Islamic infiltration or invasion of the education system. Remember, they're going to do it with the government, they're going to do it with the education system, open borders, they're going to infiltrate that way, and then you're going to see this explosion. The Muslim Students Association, this is a part of the America's education system. It's the first Muslim Brotherhood entity formed in America, like we've discussed before, in 1962, and it has chapters at nearly every major college and university campus. Our universities, our college campuses are being infiltrated with anti-Semitic literature, and obviously that comes from the wound of Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood. The MSA is a point of recruitment for the Muslim Brotherhood, and it promotes a Sharia-based agenda. The MSA aggressively promotes anti-Semitic operations on many campuses, such as Anti-Zionist and Israel Apartheid Week. Okay, so we have to understand this, that our children are being indoctrinated at even younger age than the colleges, and we're going to get into that, but the colleges are totally being overtaken by an Islamic doctrine of anti-Israel, anti-Semite behavior. The International Institute of Islamic Thought, it has donated massive amounts of money to several universities and colleges to establish its radical Islamic education or Sharia-based doctrine to American young adults, perpetuating the ultimate Islamic takeover of America. These universities, I'm not going to mention them by name, you can see them. These are the universities that has definitely bowed down to the Islamic doctrine. In 1988, a source for the FBI reported, in phase one of the Islamic revolution as followed by the Muslim Brotherhood, the IIIT, which we're discovering, leadership has indicated that in this phase their organization needs to peacefully get inside the U.S. government and also American universities. Saudi Arabia has also pumped their petrodollars in colleges and universities to appoint radical Islamic professors and teachers in departments of history, political science, Middle East studies, and so forth and so on. Basically, these professors, they connive and brainwash our students, our children, with an anti-American and anti-Zionist point of view. They're deceivingly convince the young adults about that America, its people, and its foreign policy are the global problem, and that America's wealth, lifestyle, and success are oppressing all the other countries in the world, which is kind of laughable because the oil, Saudi Arabia, that's who's doing it, okay? That's who is the hypocrite. They're doing that, we're not doing that, but they are the ones who's imposing Sharia law on everybody because of their wealth, because of their oil, because of the harlots' oil, drunkenness of the kings of the earth, and that's very clear. In recent years, American public schools have been indoctrinated with Islam as well. Research and studies have reported more than 500 historical eras in the public school textbooks on Islam, clearly showing a biased and favorable view of Islamic doctrine. We're seeing this in our very young children's education right now. Clearly, the U.S. government, which is infiltrated by Islamic extremists and their petrodollars, is to blame for this atrocity because of its legislative influence and implementation of Common Core, a national curriculum. Again, you can thank the Bush administration for that, the good friends of the Saudis. So you can thank George W. Bush for Common Core. Again, what a disgrace. Consequently, America's youth are being deceived, and they are in danger of being indoctrinated into following or defending Islam's radical teachings and practices. You can see it coming. You can see the liberalism. You can see people turning towards Islam, etc. The Islamic indoctrination has reached such insanity that a school in California, this was back when I wrote the book in 2018, and in other cases taught its students a course that essentially requires them to be Muslims for 3 weeks. I mean, give me a break. I mean, this is ridiculous. The schools asked them to dress as Muslims, change their names to Muslims, memorize verses from the Quran, and make Islamic faith declarations such as Allah is the one true God. This is indoctrination. This is brainwashing. This is absolutely evil. Certainly, all of the madness in the public school system has ensued because the U.S. government is bowing down to radical Islamic groups such as the Council of American Islamic Relations, which is CARE, which is a terrorist organization, and the American Council, who has direct connections to terrorist organizations associated with Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood. In fact, the Muslim Council representative is serving a 23-year prison sentence for being a top fundraiser for Al-Qaeda in America. Furthermore, there are more than 225 Muslim schools in the United States that indoctrinate an estimated 50,000 children with Islamic education. Think about that. Again, the overall financier of these schools is Saudi Arabia and the Muslim Brotherhood, which certainly will be teaching and grooming these children into a strict Wahhabi Sunni Islam. Bridget Gabrielle, who has really been a champion with this cause, and we just want to give her a lot of honor and credit. She's the founder of ACT for America and the American Congress of Truth, summarizes the Islamic indoctrination of children very well by proclaiming, "They foster an environment of hate, loathing, and resentment towards Western culture, Christians, Jews, Shiites, secular Muslims, and non-Muslims." So this is very important to understand this. So we went through the statistics now of all of these things, and we did it for a point. I appreciate your patience with it, but it's very important to understand where the wound comes from. Saudi Arabia, Muslim Brotherhood basically comes from Arabia. I know they've separated, but the doctrine, the Wahhabi, okay, and the ultimate goal for America, both agree on, okay, and the influence they've had on presidents, Republican and Democrat, and the Congress, Republican and Democrat, the serpents and the vipers. You have to understand we are under tremendous duress with this, in my opinion, and most don't even recognize it because that's how it's done, slowly, patiently, through the government, through the education system, and then all of a sudden, oh, how did we get here? Well, it's very simple. We haven't opened our eyes to what's going on in our nation, and we haven't elected the officials that could come against this, because of our strong Judeo-Christian values, and eventually it's going to lead to the prophecy which we're speaking of, which is the end of the age hunters coming in America just like they're doing in Europe. Okay, so now let's discover the results of these things that we're seeing. Anti-Semitism on the campuses of our universities. Obviously, as the petrodollars perpetually pump anti-Semitic doctrine into our American colleges and universities, it has resulted in a significant rise in anti-Semitism. The ADL released data that reports in 2015, think about blood moons, anti-Semitic attacks significantly rose by 3%, with a 50% increase in violent assaults than in the previous year. Again, we're going off of the blood moon tetrad, the marker of Satan's end of the age hunters being released into Europe. We're going off of that really as we go forward, and it will continue. On college campuses, it nearly doubled in 2015 compared to 2014. Okay, think about that, doubled from 2014, the first year of the blood moons, to 2015, the second year of the blood moons. In 2014, a study by Trinity College found over half of Jewish college students have experienced anti-Semitism on their campuses. Does this sound like the safest refuge for the Jewish people? Does this sound like the land of the free for all these hundreds of years that we've given the Jewish people a safe refuge? In 2016, okay, this is the AMCHA initiative, an organization that fights anti-Semitism on college campuses, reported the number of incidents involving the suppression of Jewish students' freedom of speech and assembly doubled from 2015. Think about that. We're seeing double from the blood moons. The AMCHA study reported campuses that have an active Students for Justice in Palestine chapter are 7 times more likely to have incidents targeting Jewish students. So this is the result of this education that we have allowed, the Islamic doctrine that we've allowed on our university campuses, our professors that we've allowed on there as well, the anti-Semitism, the anti-American rhetoric, the liberalism of hating America. That's what we're seeing on our campuses. That's what we're seeing in the education system. And now you're seeing the results of that. And you'll continue to see the results of that because, number one, the prophecy, but I think we have an opportunity to delay if we act and we come against these things. If not, then you're going to see this prophecy escalate. The hunters will escalate, and I believe you are seeing that. So now let's discover the open borders. We've discovered the infiltration of the U.S. government. We've discovered the education systems, even as little adolescents in our school systems, the babies, the children, our young children. We're seeing this come through all the education system, and now you're seeing it through the open borders as well. And we're going to hit on that really quick before we tie all this in. Republicans and Democrats, again, both parties have had tremendous opportunities to protect our children and to protect our borders from the entry of terrorists, and they both have failed. Although Donald Trump, who was our previous president, has boldly and sternly pledged to build the wall, which he did, I think he got some of it done to crack down on the Islamic terrorism and also our open borders. I believe that was too late anyhow, because the negligence of our open border policy for several decades has allowed, in my opinion, these people to enter into America. And this is some statistics for you that proves this point. In 2006, a House Committee on Homeland Security reported that each year hundreds of illegal aliens from countries known to harbor terrorists or promote terrorism are found trying to cross the border along the Rio Grande Valley. The report acknowledged that members of Hezbollah have already entered the United States across the border prior to 2005. In 2012, a report from the House Committee of Homeland Security showed 1,918 special interest aliens were stopped at the border from fiscal years 2006 to 2011. By the way, special interest aliens is code for terrorists, okay, or Satan's hunters. On March 23, 2016, at a House Oversight Committee National Security Subcommittee hearing, U.S. Representative Ron DeSantis declared recent reports state that the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has apprehended several members of known Islamic terrorist organizations crossing the southern border in recent years. The Houston Chronicle validates DeSantis' statement from a report inappropriately obtained from the State Department of Public Safety, who distributed it to the Texas elected officials, which acknowledged that border security agents have apprehended several Somali terrorists who are known members of Al-Shabaab, an Islamic extremist group that was once funded by Osama bin Laden. Other special interest aliens have been arrested while obviously attempting to cross the porous southern border and have been known connections to terrorist groups such as Afghans, Iranians, Iraqis, Syrians, Libyans, and Pakistanis. It is reported that immigrants who have been arrested over the past few years have terrorist associations, and they originate from 35 countries in the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. From November 2013 to July 2014, authorities reported 143 land border crossings encounters with watch-listed individuals from these countries in southwest border states. What is even more disgraceful is the Department of Homeland Security's terrorist hands-off list, which was revealed when Senator Charles Grassley released internal DHS emails in 2014. The emails included a 2012 communication between the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and U.S. Customs and Border Protection about whether officials would give a visa to a person who is believed to be Muslim Brotherhood member and associated with Hamas and Hezbollah. Again, why would terrorists be hands off? This is incredible. This comes down from the US, top to the bottom, from the presidents, the U.S. Congress, on down further, the Republicans and the Democrats. Positively, the Islamic invasion of the U.S. government impacted this ridiculous and insane list, just like I just mentioned, because of our corrupt, bought-off politicians, Republicans and Democrats in Washington, D.C. To put this in perspective, in 2017, the GOP Congress killed a legislation bill banning taxpayer funding of Hamas, a sworn enemy of it. They killed it. They killed it. Instead of approved it, they killed the legislation, which is not good. Again, Republican and Democrat. Therefore, if our greedy and ignorant politicians killed a bill to stop the funding of a terror group with our tax dollars, do you think they will stop them from entering our country? Everybody can do what they want to with that. So now let's get to the Muslim refugee population that has invaded our country. And I want to be very clear, we were made on immigrants. You know, I love all communities. You know, you think about the beautiful communities that we have, Little Italy, Chinatown, etc. It's just a beautiful thing. We are a very diverse country. We have beautiful immigrants from all over the world who's come to America for the sole goal of freedom, prosperity, and a safe refuge. However, with that being said, Islam takes no pride in that at all. Okay, they do not assimilate. Okay, and there's one thing to come over and assimilate and have your culture be a light to us, which we love, but at the same time, Islam's the dominant. They want to dominate, they want to eradicate, they want to erase everything that we're built upon, which includes Chinatown and Little Italy and all of these beautiful places that we have in America. So it's important to understand that Islam is a dominant. They take no second to no one. Okay, and it's one thing to come over and assimilate to our country. That's one thing, just like we should assimilate if we go to Iraq, if we go to Iran, if we go to Turkey, we should assimilate. Europe, we should assimilate to their country. That's what makes the world so beautiful, is that we're all different and we should have respect for whatever country that we go to, whether it's America, Mexico, wherever that may be, China, Russia. We should respect that country enough to assimilate to the best of our ability to assimilate it. And what we've seen with the Muslim refugees as a whole, okay, not every one of them, some of them true asylum, they try to assimilate, of course they do, but some of them do not. The extremists, the radicals, they definitely do not. And we're going to go through some of these things that's very important, that they want to change America. Again, the terrorists, the extremists. I'm not talking about the average Muslim person. They are great people and they have assimilated. I'm talking about the extremists, the wound of Saudi Arabia, if you will, the wound of the Muslim Brotherhood to come over and to cause upheaval, to cause terror, etc. In 1992, according to the Pew Research Center, 41% of green card holders arrived from the Middle East, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the Asia Pacific region, where fundamentalist Islam dominates. I'm talking about the radicals again. Since 1992, an estimated 2 million Muslims have immigrated to the United States. On the contrary, before 1990, fewer than 5% of foreigners who took up residence in the United States came from Muslim countries. Again, the Islamic invasion, and with that comes the radicals that do not want to assimilate. In 2002, the percentage increased to 53% for these regions. Over that same period, the number of Muslim immigrants coming to America annually has doubled, from an estimated 50,000 to 100,000 each year. Again, we're seeing this Islamic invasion. I love immigrants. I want them to come, but they need to assimilate to our culture in America. Of course, there's not an official estimate of Muslims in America because the Census Bureau does not track religious affiliation. Nevertheless, Pew estimates that there were 2.75 million Muslims living in America in 2011, with only 1.7 million of them holding legal permanent residency status. On the contrary, CARE states that there are approximately 7 million Muslims in America. Okay, and obviously, under the Barack Obama administration, immigration from Muslim countries, from terrorist countries, escalated at a pregnant pace, at an alarming pace. And here's some stats for this. The Business Daily reported that between 2010 and 2013, the Obama administration imported approximately 300,000 new immigrants from Muslim nations known for Islamic fundamentalism, more than from Central America and Mexico combined in that same period. Many of the 41,094 immigrants were from terrorist hotspots like Iraq, where ISIS operates. House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mike McCaul proclaimed that Obama's new policy is a federal sanctioned welcoming party to potential terrorists. We can have confidence that ISIS and other terrorist groups have taken advantage of our open border policies, as well as other lackadaisical politically correct immigration policies, and they have cleverly but legally entered America to promote their agenda, which we've discovered. In fact, it is reported that American authorities are not able to estimate the number of homegrown terrorists, much less the infiltration of the refugee population. In Pew's report, The Future of the Global Muslim Population, Projections for 2010 to 2030, it projects that if the current trend continues, the Muslim population in America will vastly increase in the next 20 years, from 2.6 million to 6.2 million in 2030. This massive wave of Muslim immigrants has resulted in some of America's towns and cities being Islamized, as I call it, which means city governments and councils are being overtaken by Muslim leadership. This will only lead to drastic changes within the cities in order to compliance with Quran and Sharia law. Again, I want to make it very clear, I'm all for immigration for everyone, but they have to assimilate, just like we have to assimilate if we go to Russia. We have to assimilate to the culture that we're in. The Islamics, the radicals will not do that. The average Muslim person does do that. So I want to make a distinction again. I'm talking about the radicals, the extremists, the ones who are causing the terror attacks, the upheaval, the anti-Semitic behavior, etc. And it all comes from the top to the bottom, just as we have seen. Now I want to go through real quick some of the examples that we've seen of what we've discussed, of the Islamic invasion into towns, into government, into transforming our cities into Islamic cities. The first one we'll discover is Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan has an estimated 100,000 people, and 40% of them are Muslims. In 2013, a leaked government document revealed that more Muslims living in Dearborn were on the federal terror watch list than from any other city except New York, and several of them have been arrested after attempting to leave America to join terrorist organizations. Even more troubling, author Steve Tarini declared that he has witnessed no-go zones where Dearborn police cannot enter while riding with a member of the Detroit Metro SWAT Police. Okay. He also states that in certain areas of Dearborn, street signs suddenly go from English to Arabic. One could conclude that Dearborn is being transformed into operating as an Islamic Sharia city. The next city we'll speak of real quick is Hamtramck, Michigan, which became the first jurisdiction in the nation to elect a majority Muslim council in 2013. In the past decade, the Muslim population exploded with the arrival of thousands of Muslim immigrants, and in 2004, the town's culture shifted because the city council gave permission to a downtown Islamic center to broadcast its call to prayer from the speakers atop its roof. That is totally amazing. Hamtramck is approximately 23% Muslim, and unless there is a change in politics, obviously it will continue to be transformed. Since the outbreak of the Syrian civil war in 2011, over 2,100 Syrian refugees have entered Michigan, and the results will continue to dangerously manifest as they have in Hamtramck and Dearborn. The next one we'll discover is Minneapolis, Minnesota. U.S. Representative Michelle Bachmann, who has been one of the few outspoken political leaders against Islam, proclaimed Minnesota is no longer the state I moved to in the mid-1960s. Then we were well-ordered society with a high-functioning population. Today, Minnesota has the largest Somali community in America with a population of approximately 40,000. As a whole, the Somali refugees have not assimilated into American society. Bachmann declared, Parallel societies kill assimilation from the third world and create havoc in American societies. She continued, this is a failed multicultural experiment that is killing people and destroying the future of the West. She is referring to the following events: a recent shooting of a man by a Somali refugee cop, Muslims being found with bomb-making devices, Somali women clothed from head to toe with Muslim clothing, the Sharia mindset of female genital mutilation, domestic abuse of women, Sharia-controlled zones, the refusal to assimilate into American culture and ways, and Islamic terrorism in the state. Representative Bachmann sums up the refugee immigration process best, declaring, immigrants must know it is a condition of entry to the U.S. to assimilate into Western society by adopting the allegiance to Western law. Immigrants should also be required to adopt Western dress and be informed that they must abandon the illegal aspects of Sharia law. We'll go through one more. Shelbyville, Tennessee. Muslim refugees, obviously they refused to assimilate into Shelbyville, Tennessee. According to a local reporter for the Shelbyville Times-Gazette, the Somalis are very, very rude, inconsiderate, very demanding. They would go into a store and haggle over prices. They would also demand to see a male salesperson, would not deal with women in stores. Their culture is totally alien to anything the residents are used to. Regrettably, the culture clash has also led to a series of violent crimes by the Somali immigrants. On September 27th through 29th, 2016, 3 churches were shot up by Muslims with AK-47s. Jihad Watch, the only media to report the heinous crime, reported a Muslim shoots up 3 churches and nothing is said about his motive or his Islamic identity. Would the same courtesy be shown to a Christian who shot up 3 mosques? Why the cover-up? Who is responsible for it? And what compounds this Islamic refugee crisis in Tennessee is that Nashville is prepared to become the most liberal sanctuary city in the United States. 2 ordinances filed by Metro Councilman Bob Mendez and Colby Sledge, drafted with the assistance of the Tennessee Immigrant and Refugee Rights Coalition and cheered on by, at that point, Mayor Megan Barry, she's no longer there, will make Davidson County and Metro Nashville the most liberal sanctuary for refugees. In fact, even more liberal in the policies than New York or San Francisco. So we have to understand, I used to live in Nashville, Tennessee, and they have a current liberal mayor who's just as bad, if not worse, than Megan Barry. And it is going to be interesting to see how these policies affect the beautiful city of Nashville, Tennessee. So again, with all of this being said, you can find other examples as well of cities that are being overrun by the Islamic doctrine. And again, there's one thing to assimilate in America. We love you, come on in. But at the same time, when it's an overrun, when it's a total change of culture, look at Europe, the bowing down of the government. Look what's happened. And with the blood moons, we're starting to see that as well from top to bottom. Presidents, U.S. Congress, Republican, Democrat, both of them, okay, have allowed the wound, okay, of Saudi Arabia, Islamic doctrine, Wahhabism, Muslim Brotherhood, the antenna spread to all facets of American society, the open borders, the education systems, okay, from top to bottom, and the U.S. government with the policies. We're seeing the same thing, the bowing down to Islam that will eventually, if we do not correct it, that will eventually pour gas on this prophecy of the hunters and ultimately will provoke the Jewish people back home to the promised land. In the words of Teddy Roosevelt, the American people must demand for migrants to assimilate because there is no room for them to be American and something else. Make a decision, American or go home to your country. Pamela Geller, the president of the American Freedom Defense Initiative, she warns this: legislators are bent on keeping America on a path that will only bring civil strife and bloodshed on a massive scale and sooner than anyone expects. Wow, this is amazing. She said that Jeremiah 16:16, the fishermen and the hunters prophecy, in this case it is the hunters is what she is speaking of for sure. And then when we look at the terrorist attacks, that have happened, and we're just going to go from the blood moons on forward, which is where we believe the end of the age hunters has been truly released into Europe. We're starting to see the shattering of America with these things as well. You're starting to see it, obviously 9/11, obviously you had Fort Hood in 2009, and the Boston Marathon attacks in 2013. But since the 2014 and 2015 blood moons, which was the sign and marker again that we believe that the end of the H100s were released, here's the following of a couple of terrorist attacks that have increased since that time in America, on the shores of America. Chattanooga, Tennessee, July 16th, 2015, a Kuwaiti Muslim immigrant opened fire on 2 military facilities, a U.S. Naval Reserve Center, and a military recruiting office, killing 5 U.S. service members. San Bernardino, California, December 2nd, 2015, a Muslim couple who had pledged allegiance to ISIS killed 14 people, seriously injuring 22 others. Until recently, it was the deadliest massive shooting for the United States since the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting, and the deadliest terror attack to occur in the United States since 9/11. Think about that, blood moons. Orlando, Florida, June 12, 2016, a Muslim man who called 9/11 and proclaimed allegiance to ISIS killed 49 people, wounding 58 others in a nightclub. At the time, it was the deadliest mass shooting in the history of the United States and the deadliest terrorist attack on American soil since 9/11. So you're seeing these records being broken. 2015, now 2016. Now let's move to 2017. Was another record broken? And the answer is yes. Las Vegas, Nevada, October 1st, 2017. It is the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history, as 58 people were killed and 546 injured. There's major controversy and several conspiracy theories surrounding this horrendous event because the investigation and statements of the federal and local authorities have major faults, to say the least. In my personal opinion, I'll tell you this was an Islamic terrorist attack. How could this be? Well, let us follow the money, like we've discussed. The CEO of Mandalay Bay, James Morin, which is where the killing occurred, has donated millions to organizations tied to Islamic terrorism, including CARE. The U.S. Justice Department has labeled CARE an unindicted co-conspirator to Muslim terrorism. Even the liberal Democrat Senator Chuck Schumer said CARE has ties to terrorism and intimate links with Hamas. Additionally, and quite revealing, Morin sold off most of his company shares, 13.7 million worth, by the way, of the company's stock prior to the Las Vegas shooting. Is this coincidence? I don't think so. Of course not, but rather indicting. Even more astonishing and troubling, Morin is a sitting member of the Homeland Security National Infrastructure Advisory Council, which obviously raises major red flags. Obviously, you can see where this is going. So let us get this straight. The CEO of Mandalay Bay, the site of the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history, is a sitting member of the Homeland Security National Infrastructure Advisory Council and has donated millions to Islamic terror groups and sold off his shares before the attack. I think we're all smart enough to see the connection here. New York City, New York, October 31st, 2017, a Muslim man drove a flatbed truck and rammed into runners and cyclists on a path in Lower Manhattan, New York City, killing 8 people and injuring 11 others. And combined with Europe, this was the 15th vehicular ramming attack by Islamic jihadists since the 2014 blood moons. And we have to understand that even today, when we look at the map of America, and this is the research by Steve Emerson of American Jihad, we have terrorist training camps on our soil, okay, and we can all do what we want to with that, but I wanted to include that through our open borders, through our education systems, through our bowing down presidents, Republican and Democrat, U.S. Congress, Republican and Democrat, the bought-off politicians, the bureaucrats have sold our country down the river, if you will, and we have allowed these things on our soil. Okay, so this is what was reported by Steve Emerson. And now we will finalize this video. I appreciate your patience, but we'll conclude this with some of the anti-Semitic in America overall. We're just going to go overall in America since 2014, and we'll lead it up into 2020, and then we'll close it. But in 2014, and again, this is the blood moons, according to the ADL, anti-Semitic attacks, incidents, the total of them increased by 21% from 2013. Think about it, blood moons. This is for America as well. This is about America. There were 912 anti-Semitic incidents throughout America in 2014, which was the first in a decade. The overall number significantly rose. Abraham H. Foxman, the ADL National Director, stated 2014 was a particularly violent year for Jews both overseas and in the United States. Think of the blood moons. Barry Lusher, the ADL chairman, national chairman, stated the report increase in U.S. anti-Semitic incidents coincided with a huge upsurge in anti-Semitic attacks in Europe and also around the globe. Again, 2014, the end of the H-hunters were released into Europe, and I believe that was a marker for America as well. The states with the highest numbers of anti-Semitic attacks were the ones with the largest Jewish populations: New York, California, New Jersey, Florida, Pennsylvania, and Massachusetts. In 2015, again, this is the second year of the blood moons. In 2015, according to the ADL, the number of violent anti-Semitic assaults in America rose 3% from the first year of the blood moons in 2014. The ADL's annual audit recorded a total number of 941 incidents in America compared to 912 in 2014. On university and college campuses, a total of 90 incidents were reported on 60 campuses, nearly doubling the 47 incidents reported on 43 campuses the first year of the blood moons. Again, we went through that, why that is occurring, the anti-Semitism of the Islamic doctrine. ADL CEO Chairman Jonathan Greenblatt stated, "We are disturbed that violent anti-Semitic incidents are rising, and we know that for every incident reported, there's likely another that goes unreported. The trend towards anti-Semitic violence is very concerning." In 2015, the ADL also reported a great outburst of hate through online social media platforms. Greenblatt declared, "Online hate is particularly disturbing because of the ubiquity of social media and its deep penetration into our daily lives, plus the anomaly offered by the certain platforms which facilitates this phenomenon. This issue has grown tremendously in recent years because the internet provides racists and bigots with an outlet to reach a potential audience of millions." In 2015, the states with the largest Jewish population were once again affected with the highest anti-Semitic incidents: New York, California, New Jersey, Florida, and Massachusetts. In 2016, according to the ADL, anti-Semitic incidents in America rose 34%, exploding by the numbers of 2015. Remember, 2014, 2015, the blood moon tetrad. Well, then it just continued. 2016, 34% increase. There were 1,266 reported acts targeting Jewish people and institutions. Greenblatt stated, "There's been a significant sustained increase in anti-Semitic activity since the start of 2016, and what's most concerning is the fact that the number has accelerated over the past 5 months. Clearly, we have work to do and need to bring more urgency to the fight." In 2017, the first quarter of 2017, a wave of bomb threats hit 29 Jewish centers in America, with evacuations occurring in Phoenix, Palo Alto, San Diego, Long Beach, Seattle, North Carolina, Michigan, Rhode Island, Florida, Pennsylvania, Indiana, New York, New Jersey, Alabama, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. In general, the first quarter of 2017, anti-Semitic incidents jumped 86%, with 541 reported incidents, which was on pace for more than 2,000 incidents in the year. Anti-Semitic incidents at non-denominational elementary, middle, and high schools increased 106%, from 114 in 2015 to 235 in 2016. This increase accelerated in the first quarter of 2017 when 95 incidents were reported. Greenblatt stated, "Schools are a microcosm of the country. Children absorb messages from their parents and the media and bring them into their schools and playgrounds. We are very concerned the next generation is internalizing messages of intolerance and bigotry." Once again, the states with the most incidents continued among the states with the largest Jewish populations: California, New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Massachusetts. In 2018, it remained another year at historical levels of anti-Semitism. Assaults against the Jews more than doubled. The single deadliest attack against the Jewish community in American history occurred in Pittsburgh, a synagogue shooting. 11 people died, and 1,879 attacks against Jewish people. It was the third highest since 1970s. Again, you're seeing this rise of anti-Semitism because of what I believe Islamic doctrine of all of the things that we have discovered in this video. In 2019, the highest level of anti-Semitic incidents occurred since 1979. Again, we're seeing record upon record happen since the blood moon tetrad of 2014 and 2015. 2,100 attacks against the Jewish people, a 12% increase from the previous year, 2018. Again, we're seeing these records keep getting hit. Poway, California synagogue shooting. We remember that. There was, one person was killed and 3 were injured, and 234 incidents against Jewish synagogues. Think about that. And 32,000 people, Jewish people, which was a record for a long time. Remember, there was about an average of 2,500. Now we have 32,000 Jewish people in 2019 make Aliyah to Israel. The prophecy continues, the fishermen, and also because of the hunters, will provoke them back. In 2020, as we know, the coronavirus hit America, and with all of these anti-Semitic behaviors of blaming the Jewish people, you look at New York, look at what's going on there. Aliyah applications rose 50% in 2020. New York and New Jersey leading the way. So you're seeing this. You're seeing when catastrophe hits like this plague that we're seeing, the coronavirus, the first people to be accused of it is the Israelis, is the Jewish people, just like for anything. So once all of these things combine, it's going to be a stew that's not going to be good for America, with what we've discovered in this with Saudi Arabia, Muslim Brotherhood, the indoctrination of our children, open borders, the U.S. government bowing down to Islam, presidents on down, Republican and Democrat. This is not going to be a good situation for America long term if we do not act upon it. So it's important to realize this, that we're seeing this prophecy escalate and intensify like we've never seen in America, like we've discovered last week. Europe, you're seeing it. Okay, you're seeing the Islamic doctrine spread its antennas, governments bowing down, nations bowing down to it. You're seeing the Aliyah, you're seeing the Terror, you're seeing the anti-Semitic, the old ghost is rising in Europe. Now it's going to come to America eventually, because these two populations are the second, America, third in Europe, largest populations of the Jewish people. And according to the prophecy, the fishermen will fish their people back. 48, 4 million Jewish people have returned. And then after that, on the blood moon tetrad, 2014, 2015, Europe, Aliyah. Now you're seeing anti-Semitism rise like it's never risen before in America. When you make the case, remember, we've been the safest refuge of the Jewish people. Okay, we've given them prosperity, and we have been blessed because of that. Genesis 12:3, we've been blessed because of the support of the state of Israel as well. And once we turn, okay, as a nation, once we turn away, we keep electing the Islamists, we keep electing the extremists, we keep electing the radicals. Who would have thought that the squad, who would have thought we would have even allowed that a couple of years ago, a decade ago, allowed openly anti-Semitism in our U.S. Congress, openly. Okay, and the squad is openly against Israel, openly against the Jewish people, pro-Palestine, pro-BDS, all of these things, anti-Zionism, all of these things openly. Who would have thought that we would have allowed that? So the church needs to stand up for our brethren, the Jewish people. We need to stand with our Jewish people, with the Jewish people, to fight against anti-Semitism. Unlike the church in Europe back in World War II, unlike them, they turned a blind eye while 6 million Jewish people were killed. So again, it's going to be a greater exodus than one from Egypt. You've seen it. You're starting to see the beginning of it in Europe. You're starting to see the beginning of it, the anti-Semitism in America. You're starting to see the applications up with Aliyah. Again, why would the Jewish people leave America if it's safe and if it's prosperous? That tells you those two things are going to not be the case for America. It's not going to be safe, which we're starting to see that with the reports of the anti-Semitism, and it's not going to be prosperous, and it will provoke the hunters, it will provoke the Jewish people from the hunters to go make Aliyah to Israel, where they will be safe in Israel for a certain period of time. And we're going to get into that timeline as well, until they're commanded by the Lord of Lords, the host of hosts, the King of Kings, to flee to the mountains at the midway point of the tribulation. So I think this is very important as Americans to understand where we are on God's prophetic timeline, number one, but also this prophecy as well. We're seeing this prophecy slowly but surely. Again, Islam is very patient with what they're wanting to do with the political jihad, with the educational system, with the open borders. They have infiltrated us in every dynamic of our land, period. They have. And our government, the U.S. government, the CIA, the FBI, the presidents, the congressmen, Republican and Democrat, they're all responsible for it. The serpents and the vipers, they're all responsible for it. They've sold our country out for sure. There's no question about that. They've bowed down to Islam for their own wealth, for their own concern, and they have spread their antennas. Islam has spread its antennas to all parts of our dynamics of America, and you will continue to see that manifest. Just look at New York, look what's going to happen in California, look at the largest populations of the Jewish people, and they are very concerned with the anti-Semitism that is rising, and that's why you're seeing the 50% application increase in Aliyah, because they know they are safe in the borders of Israel, and they will be safe in the borders of Israel. Nothing will happen to the state of Israel until a certain marker, the last 3.5 years of the age. So we'll go through that timeline in the last video. But friends, this is very important for us to stand with the Jewish people, stand with Israel, sound the alarm in a responsible way to see what's coming. It begins very slowly and then it increases just like it did with Europe. So I would like to leave you with a quote from our first president, George Washington. And I'm just going to, his inaugural address of 1789. And again, it goes back into America. It goes back into being the salt of the earth, the light of the earth, to protect all people, including all people, but including also the Jewish people as well. And and this is what he said, since we ought to be no less persuaded that the smiles of heaven cannot be expected on a nation that regards the eternal rules of order and right, which heaven itself has ordained, and since the preservation of the sacred fire of liberty and the destiny of the Republican model of government are justly considered as deeply, perhaps as finely staked on the experiment entrusted to the hands of the American people. So we need to understand we have a responsibility for liberty, for freedom, for safety, for all citizens, and that includes the Jewish people, so that we can remain that safest refuge, so that we can be called a sheep nation when Messiah separates us in Matthew 25, Joel 3, they work together. So friends, I hope this has been helpful. Stay tuned. We've got 2 more videos in this book series. We're going to go through the final hunter, which obviously is the Antichrist in next week's video, and then we'll go through the time of Jacob's trouble, which will lead us to the glorious appearing of our Lord, our Messiah, Yeshua, Jesus, when he returns. But it will lead us into this prophecy to a certain point, and then we'll go through the last few years here through the scriptures, and those 2 videos are so important to understand as we step into the future, which we have stepped into the future with the last 2 videos of Europe and America. This will continue all across the world. The fishermen and the hunters, the nations will be rattled. Zechariah 1, the nations will be rattled to provoke the Jewish people to go back. So we're living in these amazing times, but we need to be in prayer. We need to make sure that we are being the light of the world, the hope of the world, and we are supporting our brethren, the Jewish people, and really all people, spreading the gospel to the Muslims, to everybody. So I hope this has been helpful to you. We've got 2 more good videos for you. And as always, may God bless you. May he keep you. May his face shine upon you and give you his grace. May he lift up his countenance upon you and your family and give you his everlasting shalom. My name is Chadwick Harvey, and you reach Faithful Performance.